Welcome back to the Ed Morrissey Show podcast. Joining me is an old friend, great friend, Phelim McAleer, who with his wife Ann McIlhenny do guerrilla theater these days. They have a new play out called. This is called. I'm sorry. I'm looking at this, and is it the? What do you call this? It's an hour and a half long. It's on YouTube. I have it listed as a Trevor project, but this is basically another one of your transcript theatrical productions that's actually a blast.
It's verbatim theater. It's called verbatim theater, right? So it's plays that are based on court transcripts, plays that are based on, say, investigations, all statements. After October 7, we went to Israel and interviewed survivors and heroes there and took all their testimonies and made a dramatic play out of that as well. So we did the Ferguson play and using the grand jury testimony. That was so powerful that 9 of the actors walked out during rehearsal because the truth didn't match what the media had told them, that there was no hands up, don't shoot. So we took this court case, this British court case, which was one of the first transgender court cases. And it's unintentionally hilarious. Somebody said humor is tragedy plus time, and I think they were so right where this is concerned.
Yeah, and this is Trans on Trial is what this is. And it's based on it's an actual case in London. It's taken from the transcripts of this trial. And this is what happened when, I guess, 2 different NGOs went to war with each other over whether or not the one was going to be recognized. You had the Mermaids, which is the trans supporting
youth.
NGO.
Trans youth. Oh yeah, the trans affirming youth organization. So yeah, there's an organization called LGB Alliance, which is, as you can hear, it's LGB without the T.
Right.
So lesbians, gays, bisexuals, who could see that the T was actually a threat to them. I mean, I think something like 80% of the women who present to gender affirming clinics actually have same sex attraction. But many conservative households, and we're talking Muslim households and Indian households and kind of third world households who are maybe living in these places, they would rather medicalize their child than admit that their child might be having same-sex attraction. Also, you've got tomboys at schools who are told by their teachers, oh, you're not a tomboy, you're actually born in the wrong body. And so they could see this was a way of, as they say, there used to be a thing, conservatives praying away the gay. This is transing away the gay.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and that's a big thing over here too with lesbians and gays, is that they're very concerned that they're trying to basically one of the things that comes up in here is conversion therapy. And a huge, many years ago, they were able to drum this idea out that you could have conversion therapy to reverse homosexual attraction, right? Same-sex attraction. Well, I don't know what you call transgender therapy and sex changes other than a different form of conversion therapy, but and a much more permanent one, because the other one was a counseling technique. This is actual physical changes to the body.
This is not conversion therapy. This is conversion surgery.
Yes, and yes,
actually,
and pharmacy and conversion pharmacy, right? Conversion pharma as well, and there's big money in that.
Yeah, and conversion, actually, it's more conversion mutilation. So the pharma comes first, and then the mutilation comes after that. But the play, so what happened was Mermaids, so LGB Alliance set themselves up, and a bit like America, in the UK, you have to get accredited by the government to be a charity because you get certain tax advantages to being a charity. And in here, it's the IRS that qualifies you for a 501c3 status. There, it is the Charity Commission, and the Mermaids objected to LGB Alliance getting charitable status, saying, "Oh, these are transphobic, etc., people. So mermaids, for the first time, I believe, in history, took a case to the Charity Commission, and no one has ever any memory of this happening before. Took a case to the Charity Commission and said, "We want you to yank their charitable status, yank their certification," and went to a full-blown hearing, and it actually turned out to be a trial about transgender ideology. A trial. It turns out the mermaids were in trial, not the LGB Alliance. It turns out trans affirming trans affirming ideology was on trial, and they had nothing there. This ideology, this medicalization of children, this mutilization of children, it's based on the flimsiest of ideology and the cliched and the gender stereotyping. That if a girl is not wearing pretty dresses and playing with dolls, then she could be born in the wrong body, and we need to get her on puberty blockers immediately.
You know, and this is the thing, that it almost plays more off of stereotypes than normal people do. And certainly the LGBT Alliance did, right? The LGBT Alliance is saying, look, people are all sorts of different ways.
Yes.
Doesn't mean that they're born in the wrong body. It just means that they're all sorts of different people.
Yes.
And the mermaids they're talking about diversity, but they're only applying one one solution, if you will,
Yes.
to the extent that even a solution's needed to this. And it's a permanent solution. It's a disfiguring solution, regardless of whether you go for surgery or just, hormonal therapies.
Yeah.
It neuters people. And frankly, I think you could probably say that both of them could be, I guess you could say both of them could have, tax exempt status as NGOs. But what was really interesting is that the mermaids were going after the LGBT Alliance over their tax exempt status on the same basis. Really honestly, they got it on the same basis that the mermaids have their tax exempt status. I mean, it's very hypocritical all the way down the line.
Well, dissent is not tolerated. If you don't get with the trans train, then you're a bigot, you're hateful, you're toxic. And that's the way it was here a lot of the times among polite society. Certainly, that's the way it was in a large part of Europe and the UK. But the UK has been very interesting. The UK has been at the forefront of the fight back in the trans fight, and I think we have a lot to learn from them there. But the play, we started off very dark here, and it is very dark. But it's a very, very funny play because
the audience was loving it. The audience is loving it in this. I mean, really, they're having a great time in this video.
Well, it's 100% based on the transcripts. And when you hear people under oath trying to defend the indefensible, it actually ends up being ludicrously humorous as opposed to serious. I mean, of course, it's a very serious matter, but
Right.
but the knots they tie themselves in, it's funny. It's funny. But it's a very serious point, and it shows, it's not a 3-minute TV interview where they can throw out talking points and fake statistics. It's they're in the witness box for hours on end. Now, obviously, the play is edited down, but they're in the witness box and they have to answer the questions. They can't rely on talking points, and they can't change the subject, and they have to, stand over everything they say with facts and data, and the facts and data ain't there.
So, Phelim, I'm not sure what the timing of the trial was. This just came out the end of April, right? The film did. And you've been doing the stage play for a while before that.
Yes.
But then the UK Supreme Court handed down its decision on what the definition of woman was going to be. And I was shocked. I was actually shocked that the UK Supreme Court sided on biological reality.
Yeah.
And of course, J.K. Rowling put out that kind of famous tweet of her smoking a cigar.
Yeah.
Tickled me no end. I mean, that was her victory lap for all of the women who've been trying to defend, biological reality.
Yeah.
And I mean, did you see that coming?
I didn't, but it actually backs up what I was saying earlier. So
Right.
the UK Supreme Court is very, very leftist. However, like all leftists, they're very political, and they could see the way the UK was going, and they could see that they would lose all credibility if they had judged it any other way. It was a unanimous decision, right? So
Right.
that's a sign of how the wind is changing.
Well, and that followed on the issue of WPATH, right? Because WPATH was the organization that was supposedly setting the standards for the medical standards for, transgender
Hmm.
activism, and they got exposed and as being fairly corrupt in this. At the same time, I'm trying to remember the name of the report. And this is also in the UK, where
The Tavistock report,
Tavistock.
the CAS Commission. So the WPATH is, I think, is an international organization, but
Yeah,
Tavistock was the leading gender clinic in the UK. In fact, the only gender clinic in the UK, I think, and they, they were setting an international standard. And Baroness Cass did an investigation into it and found that children were turning up with multiple mental health issues, and the solution to them all was transgender mutilation. You know,
autism being one
yeah,
of autism
yes,
highly presented in that. Yes.
yeah, yes, all kinds of conditions, and I think 3/4 of the girls were same sex attracted. But no, that couldn't be what was wrong with them. That it had to be, that couldn't be what was making them unhappy or making them confused. And it couldn't be that they were autistic, and it couldn't be that they were depressed. No, it was because they were born in the wrong body and they needed mutilating gender affirming surgery. So the cast was going, this is a medical scandal and needs to stop now. And Tavistock has closed. So this is where the UK was going. Tavistock has closed. The Supreme Court, the mermaids lost their challenge to the LGB Alliance, and the Supreme Court has now decided a woman is a woman. So these judges, they may be leftists, but they're political, and they saw the way the wind was blowing and they bent accordingly.
How much, if at all, did the Cass report come up in the LGB Alliance trial for lawsuit?
It's very interesting. Very interesting. Good point there. And you can see it in the play. We touch on it slightly. So Cass had only put out an interim report at that stage, but the interim report was very, very damaging. So the Cass only came out a year or two ago. This trial predates by a few months, the final report, but she had put out an interim report. So obviously, LGB Alliance was asking mermaids, who are the experts on trans youth, right?
Right.
Uh, you know, what do you think now with the Cass report? And every one of them says, "Well, I haven't read the Cass report," and they're going, like, this is like the document that oh well, we don't get involved in medical. We just counsel children and get them to services. And she was going, yeah, but you send them to doctors for puberty blockers, and then that's a pathway to surgery. Yes, but we're not a medical organ. We don't do any surgeries. Yes, but you might actually, you might. This is the first big international, credible investigation into trans youth, and you say you haven't read the interim report. In other words, they had read the interim report, but they were just determined. But it was in that to continue on doing what they're doing is indefensible. So they had to say they hadn't read it.
Phelim, this play here, based on actual trial,
Hmm.
actual courtroom presentation. I don't know if you call it a trial or a hearing, but based on
Yes.
court, it's a courtroom drama. It's just
Hmm.
a verbatim transcript of a courtroom drama.
Yep.
Americans love courtroom dramas. I love
Yes.
courtroom dramas. Everybody loves a courtroom drama, and I mean, this is a great way of presenting this with dramatic readings from professional actors in front of a live audience who's clearly primed to enjoy this. Right? First off, I guess I'll just ask you the cultural question first. Are you surprised that Americans are so into the whole courtroom drama thing? And was that something that was on your mind when you create these verbatim theater pieces?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a reason legal procedure, you've got hospital procedurals and legal procedurals, and cop procedurals. And that's basically, LA law, the good wife. I mean,
Yeah,
it's all there.
house. You got
Yeah.
you got ER. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you're right about that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So there's legal procedures, there's medical procedures, and there's cop procedures. And if you take away those, you'd have no TV.
well, you got
Um,
HGTV. So
yes.
you'd have to do a renovation verbatim theater. I'm not sure how much anybody's going to go into that.
Yeah. Big fans of HGTV, by the way. Yes. So no, I mean, another thing about a courtroom is it's where you're kind of forced to tell the truth. Now, courts are becoming very, very political, especially in the coasts here in America, and I'm not sure that in many coastal cities that a conservative would get a fair trial. But a lot of courts are very fair, are still where justice happens, and it really shows up the thinness of ideology, some ideologies now. And I think people are tired. That's why long form podcasts are so popular, actually, because people like interrogation of issues. They like to get to the truth, not to the sound bites. They're done with the 3 minute interview, or the talking points. It has its place, but it's just not as satisfying as an issue being interrogated and the truth coming out. So I mean, we did Ferguson, we did October 7. It wasn't courtroom, but no, people love the verbatim. I always notice when we do verbatim theater, when, if you go to an ordinary play, people sit back and listen to what the writer is saying, the words the writer has put in the character's mouth. If you go to a verbatim theater, everyone's leaning forward a little bit because they don't want to miss a word, because they know every word is important and is a word that a real person said. You know.
Yeah, what made you choose this particular issue? Because again, I believe that this was first staged in the UK, right? And
Yes.
did you stage it first in London? Have you staged it live here in the United States? I
No,
guess I should ask you that.
no, no. It was only in London, and the actors are, of course, are amazing. They're these, incredibly talented British actors. Of which there are many thousands. Like,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, they're Shakespearean in their skill. They're just fantastic. And they do a great job of making the ludicrous even funnier. I don't know. It's just something about a British accent. When you say, what do you mean by stroppy?
That's the one we talked about that just before we started recording. It's like at least I kind of got a sense now of what stroppy means. And honestly, this is fun. It's actually fun to see that. It's sort of this, it's a serious conversation. That attorneys are paid to make people be very specific
That's
on the stand. And so you understand why it's being challenged, but it just seems so kind of, it really highlights the absurdity
yes,
of these exchanges and of the topic. The idea that somehow boys can be girls and girls can be boys.
yes, yeah, no, and the actors are just amazing, and of course it's almost impossible to get a venue in anywhere to do these kind of plays. That's our biggest problem. And we manage, basically the venue is a underground, basically a jazz venue, where they do jazz, they do subversive comedy as well. But it's this little cellar like place with a
Yeah.
low ceiling. You feel like a guerrilla theater. It's subversive. And there's a real subversive feeling to it, and there's a subversive feeling among the audience. I mean, thank God there were no fire marshals around that night, because I think we were involved in serious overcrowding.
See, and that's interesting. Do you plan to stage it here in the United States, or do you think that the film pretty much now speaks for itself?
And that's, listen, if somebody can come up with a venue, I and obviously funding is the big problem too.
Of course.
And if anyone would like to support our worthy cause, it's unreportedstorysociety.com, unreportedstorysociety.com. We are a 501c3. Everything's tax deductible. But funding's actually the big issue. We could put it on, we've been able to find some venues now. We can put it on in New York, we could put it on in LA, but the venue is getting a venue is the place, and getting funding, and people.
Getting cast members that will commit to it too. I mean, I don't know if you had any difficulty in London finding cast members that would stay committed to it, but you've done this in Los Angeles before, and you've had actors who walk away because they don't like the material and or afraid of what the backlash is going to be, and could be a little bit of both.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's an issue, right?
Oh, massive issue, massive issue. Obviously in the big centers, you're more likely to find people who actually do appreciate diversity of thought. And this is why when I see President Trump going to saying we're going to put tariffs on non-American movies, and all this, and support America, I'm thinking, please don't, Mr. President. Like they're not that upset, they're not that desperate. Like if 9 of them can walk off our play, in fact, it was more than 9, because we had to replace the replacements because they walked off as well as the pressure increased. And that's happened at whether it was the Gosnell movie, whether, everything we do, we always lose people along the way, whether it's actors or directors. And, you're not that desperate then for work. You're not that desperate. Ferguson was on the front page of the LA Times. It was in GQ. It was on NPR. Really, so as somebody said, finally they put the theater back on the front page of the LA Times, and these actors were walking out of it. Is this not what you live and breathe for?
Well, I mean, one of the things that you kind of think of when you're going into this business, I would imagine, is that you're working to the material. You're not necessarily working for the cause of that material. And well, I mean, certainly people are their own free agents. If they decide to walk away from work because they don't like the project, that's their choice.
That's correct.
But we're friends. You and I are both friends with Adam Baldwin, right?
Yes.
Just to use an example of this, and he had a very famous role in Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket, in which he played a racist guy, right? And people, this is like 30 years later, he's getting attacked on Twitter for a couple of the lines that he read in that movie, and he's like, I read a script and I would never have turned down an opportunity to work with Stanley Kubrick, so get over it,
That is so weird. Isn't that so weird?
It's so strange. It's so strange. And I guess that, if it really crosses your, I guess another counterexample to that would be, supposedly Quentin Tarantino told Denzel Washington that he couldn't wait to work with him, and Denzel Washington basically told him, forget it, or some, words to that effect. That was some story, because Denzel Washington doesn't like Quentin Tarantino's, approach to things, I guess we could say.
Yes, his use of certain words. Yeah.
The use of a certain word, right. And that's totally fine too. I mean, that's Denzel Washington's prerogative. But honestly, we're not talking about Quentin Tarantino's script of sticking words in people's mouth. We're talking about, Ferguson. It was verbatim from the grand jury proceedings. This is verbatim from a courtroom hearing. I don't know if you had any problems with this particular one, but and I don't know if you had problems with the October 7th verbatim theater one either. But I mean, this is what actually happened. And you'd think that actors would say, look, it's worthy to get this out, debating its art of its own kind, and it's interesting, and they're going to pay me.
Yeah. And I'll be on the front. I mean, we had the New York production of Ferguson, got a 3/4 page in the Wall Street Journal for a play. You know what I mean? For a play. Yeah. Like, sorry, folks. Like, I mean, I would think a lot of those actors haven't been mentioned in a major newspaper since. A lot of them, like, it was a major production, and so yeah, and it's fine if you don't want to, but you never hear Denzel Washington complain about how hard the movie industry is. If he doesn't want to work with Quentin Tarantino, and and by the way, Tarantino's not for everyone's taste, right? And he does like the N word. You know, he does. Like, let's be clear about that. And you know, and that's not for everyone's taste either. But you know, he always has bad people saying it, or you know, it's always in a context. But it's not for everyone, and fine. But then don't come complaining about how hard your industry is if you're not going to take legitimate work. And it's not words invented by me that are insulting to Michael Brown. It's words by black people about Michael Brown. And that was the people, you know, most of the eyewitnesses who said Michael Brown attacked the police officer were black people who had no love of the cops either, by the way. But they they wanted to tell the truth. They told the truth, and it was, and they were, so the people, the actors who walked out, were denying. Were, you know, they, you know, here, oh, there's never any good roles for people of color. Well, I had plenty of them,
Yeah.
plenty of them, and you know, we hear all this. Oh, we need more black voices in the theater. I was at a production recently in the theater where you know, where they had they were featuring the grandson of a Nazi. You know, talking about how terrible it was to be the grandson of a Nazi, and they had a black actor playing the grandson of a German Nazi in Germany, and I'm going, like, you know, I know, you know, and the thing was, there was all these other roles that didn't have to be race specific, you know, but they decided, no, no, we're going to make the Nazi's grandson black, and it's like, this is just ridiculous. This is taking everyone out of the play, right?
Right.
Um, you know, it's just everyone's going, oh, right, I get what they're doing now, yeah, and you know, you have to spend about 3 minutes thinking about that. Meanwhile, you've missed the story. This is not that. This is actual roles for black people that are important roles in American history. But because they
Yeah.
go,
And trans on trial, I mean, also important roles for gays and lesbians, right? I
yes,
mean,
yeah, yeah,
most of the people that were testifying in this on both sides were
yes.
gay, lesbian, or trans. Did you have any problems holding on to cast members for trans on trial?
I think we made it very clear, you know, read the read the I say, old chap, would you mind awfully reading the script before you come and understanding exactly the kind of play this is, old chap? Only we didn't quite put it as politely as that. But it was like, you know, because sometimes, you know, let's be honest, sometimes you don't mind a bit of controversy, right? But I was very concerned that we wouldn't be disrupted by a walkout. You know, when you start rehearsals and it's a staged reading, you only get 3 or 4 rehearsals, and that's another thing. These actors, like, I think they had maybe three rehearsals, and when you have 3 rehearsals, you can't afford a walkout. You need
Right.
you need them to work as a group, as a grouping, and make it happen.
You don't want them getting stroppy, is what you're
No,
trying to
no, you do not want to get them to get stroppy.
get stroppy.
Yes,
Um, did you get feedback from the? I mean, obviously, we're seeing feedback in real time, right? In this video, trans on trial. It's on YouTube. I'll have the links for everyone. But did you get feedback? Any specific feedback? Did you ask for feedback from the audience members as after the play was over?
oh yeah, no, we had a Q&A afterwards. It was very, very interesting. You know, uh, people really, really appreciated it. You know, people, as somebody said, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Actually, people really realized this is like thalidomide of our times.
Yes.
This is the biggest medical scandal in history, a medical scandal in 100 years, the biggest medical scandal since eugenics. You know, and it ends up with sterilized young people, the same way as eugenics. It's a massive, massive story, and I'm very, very happy and very pleased to be part of you know, the exposing of it and the destruction of the trans ideology.
Hey, those are good analogies. The thing that's always occurred to me, the analogy that's always occurred to me was the recovered memory
Mm.
scandals in the 1980s. Remember the McMaster
Yes.
preschool
Yeah.
trial? It was a witch hunt, and I mean, it was just ridiculous case that prosecutors brought, and people bought into it
Yeah.
because everybody heard, oh, recovered memories, that's a real thing. And it turned out it wasn't, and it's been thoroughly discredited ever since. But it ruined people's
Yeah,
lives.
but it just these fads just keep cropping up. I mean, to kind of get off topic, but we covered the Weinstein trial the last time, and actually, I don't know too much about the P. Diddy trial, which is opening this week.
Yes.
So they're bringing in experts who it's kind of reverse recovered memories that you can now look back. So there are women who had, by their own admission, consensual relations with Harvey Weinstein, but they claim that the first encounter was rape, but after that it was consensual, and they were some, or they thought at the time it was consensual, but they now are according to these psychiatrists that the prosecutors bring in, they can now look back and say, oh, I now realize that I didn't realize at the time, but my memory now tells me that was rape. It's kind of, I suppose it is recovered memory, but no, they always remembered it. It's reimagined memory.
Yeah.
And like Harvey Weinstein, the last time was convicted, there was one woman who had hundreds of emails with him, all friendly, several sexual encounters, had wanted him to meet her mother, called him a father figure, all that. And now he was cleared of those charges, and they're retrying him at the moment. But many of your listeners might find it weird that I'm saying that Harvey Weinstein is innocent. I'm saying there's no evidence to convict Harvey Weinstein, and the same politicization of the law that they did in New York to convict Harvey Weinstein, a lot of the legislation, a lot of the twisting of the law, they then used to convict one Donald J. Trump.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Weinstein was the canary. Sorry?
Show me the man, I'll show you the crime. That was Stalin's.
Yeah, and Weinstein was kind of the canary in the coal mine. Can we do this? Can we do that? Can we twist that? Can we make this happen? Can we change the law so people can now reimagine something that happened 30 years ago and say, oh, I may have sent an email saying this was, I was in a relationship with you, but now I realize I now reinterpret that and say it was not consensual, and they're allowed to do that.
So Phelim, just to wrap up, what's coming up next for you and McIlhenny? You got new project?
We want everyone to watch Trans on Trial. We'd love to put it on in America. If anyone wants to get involved in that, please let us know. We want October 7, the play, to have a massive life. We want to bring it on a campus tour. It went for 6 weeks in New York. It was on in Princeton. It was on in UCLA. We wanted to bring it around to Columbia, Harvard, all the good places that need to hear the truth. It's the truth about October 7th, and there are a lot of American university campuses that need to hear that truth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're going to get the links and everything so that people can go figure out how to support you and how to keep making these things happen. But you can go ahead and relate your website and any links, any social media links. Why don't you let us know right now?
Yeah, well, unreportedstorysociety.com is that's the main website. But you've got things like transontrial.com if you want to see the play. And then you've got October 7, the play, if you want to learn more about the October 7 play.
All right. Well, we're going to have all those links on our post, of course, as well. But Phelim, it's been way too long since we've talked, and it's great to catch up with you. Please give Anne my best, and
thank you.
We'll do this a little bit more often in the future, I hope.
Thank you. All the best. Bye.